Hey guys, this is Justin with Yu-Gi-Oh! Teammate. I'm here with
Lewis.
and
David.
and
Not Mike.
and
Bill.
and
Rachel.
woo.
Roll call.
And basically what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the ban list, and along with that we're just going to talk about a couple of different things, have a little discussion.
We're so hyped for September 2012.
Yes.
Not really.
I'm hoping that the changes are good as opposed to the last ban list that just sort of let the main decks just sort of run.
Coast, yeah.
Yeah, sort of coast through.
Because why not? It sells more.
Yeah.
There's spoilers, guys. Everything we say can be nullified by the fact that Konami wants to sell you cards.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened. At the time, Order of Chaos had just came out, and that just made wind-up super fantastic, and it just brought out the Inzektors, the two big decks. Of course it was going to just coast.
Same thing that happened with 6 Sames at the time. It came out in
Exactly.
February. Didn't get hit. Ran a
And,
format.
the Dark Worlds.
At the end of the day, it's about the money.
Infernities.
But
They've
we're
all
not
had their
here to be
format.
grumpy, right?
Right. And
Huh?
what we're going to say
What?
basically
Wait,
is
what?
not an official ban list. It's just what we'd like to see, what we think should be, what we hope that Konami will
Hopefully think about.
will hopefully do to try and even out this game and make it more fun for everybody.
Discussion.
So, yeah, discussing it.
We're
so
going
we're
to
going
start off with 3 decks.
Right.
And our big theme for the first 3 decks are that we want to recycle. Lots of recycling. We like
Go
being green.
green.
We do like
Yes.
being green. And we're going to make these decks be green. We're going to make them recycle. At least in my opinion. The first thing we're up to is Dino-Rabbit, which we know you all love Dino-Rabbit. We are going to not hit Logia.
Yeah, we don't want Logia hit.
Because then we hit the Czars.
Yeah, we hit Evolzars, and not only that, we basically think that hitting Logia just gets rid of, other options for other
A
decks.
symptom.
Yeah, it's just a piece of the deck. They'll figure other things out with Rabbit. Rabbit is the problem of Logia. I mean, is the problem of
Dino-Rabbit.
Dino-Rabbit. That's the big problem.
That's what's in the name.
We were also thinking of banning Sabersaurus. They outvoted me on that.
We weren't thinking of that.
No, not
No.
I was.
it was
weren't.
him.
I was.
But the real problem is Rabbit, and the problem is that they have so many Rabbits. They have the ability to just keep using Rabbit over and over and over and over again.
You don't have to think, you can just drop a rabbit.
Right.
drop
Just
a
drop
rabbit,
Rabbit,
it
hold
gives-
on to your other Rabbit, and just keep going.
Their only fear is chain disappearance. If you hit a single one, they're like, oh, well, I got a second.
Yeah,
I'll come into it.
yeah. If you drop the Rabbits to 1, they have to figure out a way to keep using that Rabbit over again and over again with Leviair, with other
Yeah.
moves. Making it less autoplay, making it a much more interesting deck and a much more interesting duel. Doesn't shut the deck down. Not by any means.
No,
Especially
it
if
just
Tour
makes-
Guide sticks around.
Right.
Yeah, which
Which we
will.
actually think that Tour Guide should stick around.
I'm fine with it sticking around for now.
It doesn't
With the
kill
battle packs
anything.
out.
Right. So that's Dino-Rabbit said and done.
Yep. Next up, we got Wind-Ups.
Or hand loop.
Yeah, and this is the card that we said should go. Wind Up Rabbit, down to 1.
Rat.
Right.
Wind Up Rat. Sorry.
Yeah.
Wind-Up Rat down to 1. And the reason we said that is I know a lot of you are like, but Zen Mighty! But Zen Mighty!
That was me.
Wow, Zen Mighty! I know, you're out there like that. Zen Mighty has the power, but by hitting Zen Mighty, you're going to severely cripple the speed of that deck. It's going to hurt it a lot, I think.
Not to
I
mention-
don't want that.
Not to mention that Zen Mighty is a card that you have to make. And how do you make Zen Mighty?
With Rat.
With Rat.
Lots of rats.
And now they can continue to make Zen Mighty, continue to use his power, but they just can't make him at the drop of a hat.
You can't drop 3 Zen Mighties in one turn and chuck 4 cards in your opponent's hand and just call it a
Yeah,
day
and win.
anymore.
Yeah.
That's why we decided to go to Rat to 1. That cuts the hand loop power in at least half. With 1 Rat, if you don't combo anything else, you're only going to get 2 Zen Mighties, so you're going to drop 2 cards. If you
Yeah.
don't combo your tour buses or anything else into it.
It's going to be much more interesting to see them really fighting to get that Rat over and over again. And it's going to make the deck a lot more fun.
Yeah, it keeps the same concept of wind-ups. It's just going to cut the speed down because you just can't drop 3 Zen Mighties turn 1.
And hand loop.
And if you want, you can still do the hand loop, but you're going to have to start running tour buses. You're going to have to devote yourself to trying to do that loop instead of just starting with tour guide into
Hand
I
loop.
win.
Another thing that
I
Konami
hate
has
hand
been
loop, by the way.
Another thing that Konami's been doing is they've been trying to reinvent decks for us. let us get a new perspective on a deck. That's why they'll get rid of some cards that we may or may not feel. That we get rid of the cards that we use a lot. That way we can use cards that we may or may not use. They got rid of Smoke Signal down to 1, and guess what? Asceticism came right up, and people realized how good Asceticism was. That's what Konami is trying to do on top of make money.
The secondary objective.
The secondary objective is to try and give us a new perspective on our decks. I think getting rid of Rat and getting rid of, getting Rat down to 1 and taking Rabbit down to 1 is going to make the decks a lot more interesting, and it's going to give people a new perspective on the deck and more reason to play it. It's going to make it fun.
Yeah.
So that's wind up said and done.
Next up, in basic... Oh, sorry, Luke.
Next up is Inzektors. I used to run this, so I know the deck pretty well. Inzektors, we chose Dragonfly because it's the same concept as Rat. It hurts the consistency with they can just go stupid. With one Dragonfly, they have to protect it a lot more if they want to do their loop into OTK. Because the one Dragonfly goes, almost all of their combo ability goes.
They can still OTK.
They can still do it.
We decided as a team that Inzektors kind of about OTK, and you shouldn't try and get rid of their OTK ability.
A single Dragonfly gives the ability to OTK, but if you knock Dragonfly down to 1, it makes it all that much more important that when you do get that 1, it is protected.
Right. You don't just throw the Dragonfly out and hope for the best.
And just be like,
it's
I
kind
got
of akin to
later.
how the Rabbit situation was.
Right.
Is that you can't just be like, oh, I got Dragonfly, I can do whatever I want. You need to think about that play, because now you have 1.
Right. And we talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. And while I thought that, I think that Hornet is a problem, the thing about Hornet is that, it's as good at 1 as it is at 3. In my opinion, even though it might not be as consistent, it's as good as at 1 as it is at 3. And I think that more people will run this deck. More people will drop this deck if you take Hornet down to 1, rather than you take Dragonfly down to 1. Even though Dragonfly is probably more essential than Hornet is. Mm-hmm. More people are going to drop the deck mainly because Hornet's the fun part.
Yeah, and Hornet's the fun part. And in addition, if the Hornet is gone, then it's totally...
The deck
well, I meant to 1.
Well, Hornet's 1 in itself, but I'm saying Hornet goes to 1. If that goes to the grave and they're like Crow on Hornet the moment it goes to the grave or something, it's just like, that's it. You scoop with Inzektors.
They can still do moves. They can still make
that
Hopper, but it's not as good.
It's
not as good.
Let's use Levier to bring it back.
You could use Levier to bring it back.
Yeah, but some of us don't have Levier.
It'll get reprinted shortly.
Next up, we got...
The Dragon.
Dragons.
Dragons.
We know you all saw that.
Dragons are just...
We're hitting Chaos Dragons and Heretics. We're thinking of 1 swoop.
And this is going to happen. I'm going to say 90% sure that Red Eyes Darkness Metal is going to go down to 1 if it stays at all.
I think it'll stay.
I think it'll stay, but I think it's definitely going to 1. It's just right now that with this card, you can just keep reusing the same field. And, this into Light Pulsar.
Yeah,
Light Pulsar dies, this into Light Pulsar. Light Pulsar dies,
my favorite part of
And then there's Heretics, which I personally
least
don't have as
favorite
much
part of the
knowledge on.
I don't have a lot of knowledge on
I
Heretics.
imagine
mine,
with
though, you're
Heretics,
dead.
you all can correct me, David, if I'm wrong on this. With Gustav Max coming out, Heretics are going to start loving multiple darkness metals, the crap out of them, because you can just drop the dragon if it's level 10 still, and you can get that Gustav Max out for 2k. It's just, because of how fast the deck is already, by using that as an XYZ material after you've used effects, if you do, again, not an expert on Heretics, it's ridiculous. And that is a way that you can hit both of the decks without trying to mar them up completely. It just slows down both decks a good chunk. For Chaos Dragons, you can at least,
Chaos Dragon still exists.
That's what I'm saying.
You've still got Lightsworn, you've still got, your card troopers and whatever it is that you decide to tech in there and run. You still got, we didn't say anything about Light Pulsar, even though he's still amazing. We didn't say anything about Eclipse Wyvern, even though he's still amazing. We think that they should be allowed to keep going with that. We just think that this card is a little bit...
You just have to take more care now.
Yeah, it's
of your boss
a little
monster.
bit stronger. That was kind of the thing. We wanted to take the bosses and make it so that you had to be careful with them, rather than just toss them out.
Strategy.
Yeah. What? We're going to have strategy in Yu-Gi-Oh?
We haven't seen that in half a decade.
And I think that's dragon said and done, right?
Yeah.
We all agree
Yeah.
on that. This next one is...
We're moving as far as I'm
Kinda
concerned,
into
not
the
top
future.
tier. We're considering what happens. If we're right about these 4, this next part's really important.
Right. Because if we're right about these 4, what we're getting rid of, what we're doing is weakening these decks, and we're allowing a deck that is a sleeping giant to just come up and completely be the meta deck.
What most would consider a 1.5 tier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, absolutely. And that's Heroes. With all 6 Omni Heroes out now, all of them out, Super Poly is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You can't chain anything to it. You can take any monster, the biggest, strongest monster that your opponent has. You can set up your graveyard for future Miracle Fusion, and you can chain it to your opponent's monster effect so that they have to pay a cost, or your opponent's card effect so they have to pay a cost, and then you still get to steal their monster away.
You
That
now have
dad
an
or that
absolute
JD
out
or-
tip.
Yeah,
Anything. You
yeah,
can just
it's
stop
an
it.
out to absolutely everything.
And you can't stop it.
And then on top of that, you have Miracle Fusion, which allows you to reuse the monsters that you just used for the Super Poly, and maybe even the card you discarded for Super Poly. And right now with Esquardo being out, I think you're going to see Elemental Heroes running a Necro Gardener or two. With it being able to be Miracle Fused away if you're not using the Necro Gardener, and also being able to be discarded for Super Poly. I just think it's going to be a tech into the decks that's going to help the decks keep going. And that's what people are going to do. They're going to start realizing that this deck is a sleeping giant.
Yeah, heroes run in all shapes and sizes, but common things between hero decks, these 2 cards.
Now, what David said, which I think is really good, we don't have any clue what's going to happen to these 2 cards. We hope something happens, but we don't have any clue what's going to happen to these 2 cards. But David said that regardless, there needs to be a balance of 4 between them. Whether this goes down to 1 and this stays at 3, or they both go to 2, or this goes down to 1 and this stays at 3, I think that 4 of these fusion cards is right, and David said it best. He said that best.
I believe 2 of each would be a very good
I prefer
alternative
2
to what
of
we
each,
have now.
but you know what? If you can't get 2 of each, I would like to have 4 total, because you still need those outs. Those are the fusion cards. Most, I don't want to say competent because that might offend some people, but most of the hero decks that you see running around at tournaments, their main methods of fusing are the Super Poly and the Miracle Fusion.
I agree.
Those are their ways out into bigger monsters.
I agree. I mean, that's not saying people don't use Poly, because
Yeah.
Poly is very recyclable, very usable.
Take
They're
ads
kind of the
turbo.
swampable.
Right. There's nothing. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with Poly, but this is the I don't want to say the poor man's version, but
It's the easy.
It's a
if
free
you're-
shit-
if you're-
it's a free
if you're running the light version of e-heroes, essentially Stratos,
if you're running Bumblebee.
yeah, Stratos, the aliases, and maybe like 2 Prismas, something like that. If you're running that just hero light sort of thing, then this is what you're running. You're not running Polys.
No.
You're running this because it's so usable.
Yeah.
And I think we're done with what we think the meta decks need to get hit with. So we talked about basically all the meta decks. The other meta decks that are still good, 6 Sams, I want to say Gravekeepers, but they're not that good right now.
They're fine where they are.
Right, they're fine where they are. I don't think they need any changes. I think they had their time in the spotlight. I think they're going to be fine where they are right
There's
now.
a-
I don't think we need to change anything for them.
Gravekeepers don't need to change. The only changes Gravekeepers are going to go through are their matchups as other decks change.
Yeah.
And Gravekeepers will always have that advantage of the Necro Valley.
Oh, yes.
I don't want to say brokenness, but just Necro Valley is so good.
Yeah. And basically, I think we're moving on to decks that we think should get some help from the ban
Older
list.
decks, they need to get some love back. They've
Yeah.
been hurting.
Okay.
They're down on their luck. First up, we're talking about Black Wings. I think Kalute to 2 is a good fix at the moment for Black Wings. I've talked to other Black Wing players that want to see Black Whirlwind. Personally, I am scared of that. I do not like that coming back, and I would like for just a Kalute to 2 testing.
If Black Whirlwind came back to 2, that wouldn't be awful. However, that's not what I feel would be a good fix for the deck. I think a good fix for the deck is to give them back their Kalute, either to 2, and then
At
if
least
that
2
works,
for now,
if
yeah.
that works, give them 3 back. I think taking Kalute all the way down to 1 was
Horrible.
completely unfair.
They didn't need it at the time. They
Right.
weren't that bad.
Yeah. And the cards that you can fix to fix Blackwings, you can either hit Kalute, Gale, or Black Whirlwind you can bring up.
I mean,
Gale is supremely splashable. You cannot just throw that out. You just can't throw out Gale because you can put it in any deck, effectively. So
Okay.
there's the fact that Gale's super splashable. There's the fact that Black Whirlwind is super pluses, and yeah.
but basically, yeah, we think they should have Kalute back.
Next up, Glad Beasts are on the discussion list. I'm
gonna let
We're
them
split.
talk about this because I disagree with
We're
them.
split. I think Bestiary at 2 is a good way to assist Glad Beasts to coming back up to a position where they're usable.
I think Bestiary at 2 is going to make Glad Beasts terribly, terribly consistent, and I think it's going to be impossible to punish them.
I think it's possible because what the fear of a Glad Beast deck is all the time is you drop that Bestiary and bottomless.
That's basically what
and
we were
crap,
saying.
you lose.
That's
You
basically what we were
there's
saying
your
with
goal.
those
Because
other
your
decks.
best fusion is pretty much gone.
That's basically what we were saying with those
That
other
is
decks.
what we're
is
saying
get-
with the other decks, but the fact is those other decks aren't so reliant on that. Bestiary makes Gyzaris, which is the absolute boss of the deck. I mean, there's Herc.
Dino-Rabbit doesn't rely on Rescue Rabbit.
Dino-Rabbit, that's true, but the Rescue Rabbit goes into other options. And you have the recyclability of it.
We're going to agree to disagree.
Okay.
But let's go on.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Wow, I don't want to talk about this. This is plant stuff. Another disagreement.
Yeah,
I say Spore to 1.
I
because
say
that
Glow Ball
requires-
back to 1.
I also say Spore to 1.
I say Spore to 1 because that requires you to put more than one card into a deck to make it work.
I agree with that. However, Spore to 1, Spore was the reason that Quasar got a little out of hand towards the end of its thing. I think the reason why Plant got hit was because of the Quasar thing that started to happen towards the end of that ban list. And I'm glad that Spore's gone. I hate Spore. The fact that they can go into Formula and then Stardust back to back, it to me is just miserable. And I'm glad Spore's gone. But Glow Up Bulb, I'm not as threatened by. But I also understand your point of view. You have to add more cards to play Spore. You have to put in like 3 or 4 plants at least to play Spore. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're just going to disagree on it, but that's all right.
Just like herp derp add.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
And then the last thing that we're going to cover on this topic is Royal Oppression.
Yeah. I agree with them. They want Royal Oppression to come back to slow decks down, back to 1. I agree. I was never a fan of Royal Oppression.
There's the scariness factor that Royal Oppression can shut down people after you've made your gigantic plays. But in a meta that's running so fast, honestly, I'm just not worried. Fields can switch so fast that a Royal Oppression, a Dark Hole drop, anything. I like Royal Oppression because fields can change in a heartbeat. And that lets you stop them from overwhelming you completely.
And
Just in one turn. They might have to use a heavy, an MST, they might have to wait a turn, but that gives you a turn to think instead of them just popping a comeback out of the blue on you.
I just don't. I always get hit right after they make their big play, and then they play Royal Oppression, and then I'm locked out.
Yeah. It happens a lot. It's happened to me a
pluses
lot, but
and
I still feel
minuses.
Royal Oppression back to 1's going to be good.
But
Because all we have to slow things down is the Solemn Brigade and Bottomless, really. And Torrential, true.
they give us 2
I'm-
torrentials.
I like
They
to
do give
see
us 2
torrential up to
torrentials.
3. That's mine.
That's Mike's Torrential to 3.
Okay, and my fun thing, because he wants Torrential to 3, which I don't think is fun, by the way. I think that we should get rid of all of the cards that let you change control, like Econ, Mind Control, and what's the other one?
Swap.
Creature Swap. And we should get
Change
Change of heart.
Change a heart back for 1. I know that that's not a great idea, but
You're
I
crazy.
want it. I want it so bad.
Hey
I want
guys,
Pot
got
of
a good
Greed,
idea.
too.
Let's take cards that people run in worse decks and throw it into every single great deck.
I agree. I'm
Whatever.
glad you agree
We're
with
done
me.
with this discussion.
Interesting.
You're
Okay.
insane. We're done.
All right, guys. This
That's
was
our
Justin
discussion.
with Yu-Gi-Oh! Teammate. We're also here with
Dave.
David and
Bill.
Bill and Mike and
Hey,
Lewis
It's Mike this time.
and Rachel.
Mike didn't have much to say because he's,
And we thank
boring.
you if you stuck through this all the way.
Yeah, if you
Oh,
stuck
yeah.
through this 20-minute video,
Kudos to you.
thank you. There's a special surprise waiting for you in your bed tonight.
Wow.
All right.
See you guys later.
See ya.
Bye-bye.